Now, does that take away from the person who was sexually assaulted and does feel wronged and did have a traumatic experience? Abso-fucking-lutely not.
So who cares? Why not do your own thing and let them say what they want?
What's up, guys, and welcome to a little bit different of a video. Today we're going to be talking about a viewer letter. Usually I do these in Friday Night Mail, as you guys know, but today I thought I would take a little bit more time to read my viewer Albert's, I guess I can call him my friend at this point, Albert's reasoning for why he descended into the MRA subculture. If you guys are unfamiliar with MRA, it stands for Men's Rights Activism, Men's Rights Activists. Eve's playing with my Death Star. She's kicking it around, it's very cute. Let me go grab it so she can't play with it anymore. Here it is. She loves it. You gonna come up here? She's looking at it wantingly. She's like, oh, Death Star, invisible. I love this game. There's like a ball in there and you're supposed to be able to get it from the top to the bottom or some shit without knocking it off of the platform. You want this? There. So instead of, as usual, having Albert's letter as a part of my Friday Night Mail, I thought I would give it a little bit more credence and actually respond to it and think about the things that he says and listen to his story and give his story a platform. As you guys know, if you're more familiar with my content, I'm kind of an advocate for men, not in that I'm some kind of weird activist or that I label myself in any certain way. I am just less of a feminist than most people and feel that in this day and age, in this society, men are underappreciated. They're under a lot more scrutiny just based on the fact that they have the wrong chromosomes. There's a lot of assumptions made about them. There's a lot of talk of patriarchy and rape culture and these kinds of ideas that are perpetuated upon these men who have seemingly done nothing wrong. There's a lot of people ignoring the fact that men deal with domestic abuse on a similar level to women. They deal with a lot of emotional abuse. They take the scariest and most risky jobs. They work a lot more. And I, for one, fucking love men. In fact, I've been talking for a while about doing a video called Ode to All Men. So maybe this letter here from Albert will help light a fire under my ass so I actually get around to finishing that video. However, on the flip side, just as with feminism, I understand that there's a good meaning behind its inception, but I don't necessarily agree with a lot of what goes on in these communities. Some of the rhetoric is off, and even the fact that we need them is kind of grimy, but I understand it's kind of a reactionary movement. Feminists have their feminism where they preach that it's so egalitarian, but then they don't care at all about men's issues. So when men are vying for custody of their children and women are winning over them, even though they're more suited to take care of the children, and many other issues like this, men felt that they needed a place where they could talk about these issues and advocate for these issues. I don't think that being an MRA or involved in MRA culture, or the activism or whatever, means that you have to be an incel or translates into the more toxic incel culture, which is involuntary celibate. It basically means that you can't get a date and you're pissed off at the world for your shortcomings instead of working on yourself. It's a very negative movement, and even if you were an incel, I would recommend not even getting involved in that, because it will keep you in that state of mind and in turn keep you unsuccessful in the dating world and otherwise. Men's rights activism, however, is a little bit more serious for the most part. So I hope that was a good preface for this. Albert does have a YouTube channel. His link will be down in the description. He made a video about me, and actually a positive video about me, which is rare. I mean, videos about me are rare in general, but when they do happen, they're usually like, oh, she's an e-thought. So that was nice. Thank you, Albert. He also made a video on the Charlize Theron North Country controversy, which is basically Charlize Theron sexually assaulting men because she wanted to release the tension of how crazy the material is in North Country, the movie, I guess. If you want to know more about that, again, link in the description. Thank you so much, Albert, for taking the time to write this and share this with me and my viewers. Let's go ahead and get started. Dear Tara, I thought I would take the time to write you about why and how I became an MRA or a men's rights activist. I'm doing this mainly because of a response you gave to a super chat asking a certain video of me. You said in your reply that things were personal for me, and you are 100% right. I hope this letter will explain why that is. So to give a little backstory, I was doing a YouTube live stream. I know, crazy, right? And Albert was there and we were talking a little bit about the North Country thing, and he's like sent me so many videos and a lot of documentation on it, and it felt to me like he was getting a little too bent out of shape about the happenings just because it was female on male sexual happenings. I don't want to call it assault or anything. Basically harassment. But from my purview, he seemed more annoyed about it than the men in the actual situation. And I feel like sometimes sometimes the emotions and the personal nature of these things can get the best of you to where you kind of blow things out of proportion even if the people in the actual situation are not. And I like to stray away from outrage culture or emotional responses from either side, even the one I agree with. Moving on. To start, I'd like to explain what an MRA is not. We are not, nor have we ever been, incels. Already touched on this in the beginning. True, once in a while, these sad souls find their way into MRA's spaces, but eventually they get called out on their bullshit. See, I already have a problem with this because you're using that fallacy where it's like, you're not a true blah blah blah, the true Scotsman fallacy, where you can just keep changing the definition and the definition that might fit someone else to be an MRA, which is basically just being an activist for men, which in my opinion shouldn't need a title or a label, but unfortunately it does because there's feminism and you need something to combat that, right? You need some way to form together as a group and do some good on the other side. But taking that label to heart and starting to give it extra definitions and parameters on that definition to where you're like, this guy, he says he's an MRA, but really he's an incel because he does X, Y, and Z. I don't like that. And I don't think that every single MRA is someone to be morally upheld, or anyone who calls themselves an MRA, and I don't think it's your job to define who actually fits into the MRA label. So that's something I have a problem with. Obviously, you want to make the thing that you're associated with feel and sound the best. But as you say, you call incels out on their bullshit, I would like to be forthcoming in calling you out on anything that smells like bullshit to me. We also aren't the regressives the media tries to paint us as. If anything, we are a live and let live sort of group, and even if some guys want a more traditional home, that is between him and his wife and doesn't make a man some sort of misogynistic monster. 100% agree with that, of course. I've never understood why the concept of a stay-at-home dad is touted as being progressive while being a stay-at-home mom is thought to be archaic. Then again, I don't understand why gender matters at all, especially when it comes to issues of abuse. I agree that it's a huge deal when a partner emotionally or physically abuses anyone, children, adults, bigger men, bigger women, smaller women, I get it, but you can't deny the reality, and I know this is a touchy thing, and this is something that we disagree on wholeheartedly. You can't deny the reality that men, because of their stature, on average, and because the fact that traditionally they do hold all of the money, which is partially power, and the security of the woman, which is what women seek out men for, to make it very reductionist, not to say that all women are gold diggers and that's all they're looking for. Just like it's not to say that men are some kind of sexist pigs that are only looking for a big fat set of titties to feed their babies and stay at home. There's a lot of nuance in this is what I'm trying to say. But to say that on average it's not scarier for a guy to attack a girl is a little bit silly. Now, I wholeheartedly disagree with the whole like you should never hit a woman. I don't think it is solely based on gender. You should try to avoid hitting someone much smaller than you unless they're actually attacking you first or something. So I agree while gender shouldn't be like the end all be all like feminists say, or like most of society has said for a long time, never hit a woman. I entirely disagree with that. But realistically, the domestic abuse when it does get physical of a man on a woman has the propensity to be more brutal than a woman on a man. That being said, we should certainly not brush aside the plethora of men who have been emotionally abused and physically abused by their spouses. It is not okay for a tiny blonde girl like me to hit a big guy like Jay or something just because of my stature. And if I hit him, he should be able to hit me back with equal force, in my opinion. The whole like you can restrain any woman or something is just nonsense. It's not possible. Doesn't make any sense. Moving on. Nothing better defines what is or should be sexism than the double standards regarding intergender abuse. Again, I think a little bit of realistic sexism makes sense. On average, we're different, but I don't think it should be a clear-cut thing about gender. A dog losing his ear in an accident would get more compassion than a man whose wife cut off his penis. Okay, so a dog doing anything sad is gonna get more compassion than any human anything. If you want me to go into more detail as to why people feel more for animals, specifically the species of animals that we find as companions, dogs, cats, bunnies, etc., that's because we have a compassion for those that are not only innocent, and animals are always innocent because even if they do things like murder for food, they're doing it out of instinctual obligation rather than some kind of higher jealousy, greed, hatred, etc. So we feel for these animals that are innocent and also cute and also that don't have a voice when we do, that don't make those types of higher intelligence decisions that we do. So that really has nothing to do with anything. It's not a good argument in my opinion because at least I feel a lot more, and I'm sure a lot of people do, feel a lot more for a dog who lost his ear or died or got run over or something. There's a lot more outrage in that and sadness than a little boy or a little girl or an adult girl doing anything. But yes, in society we do protect women because women are the weaker species, even though that's not necessarily the case anymore because women hold a lot of power in society and they can do all of the things that men can do, especially in the workforce, which gives them the money, which gives them the power. Traditionally, that's how it's been. And it makes sense because small all. And furthering the species and protecting our young, which is the furtheration of our species. Is furtheration a word? Not sure. Just look at how the 2011 cast of The Talk reacted to Catherine Q. Becker's story, as well as others, and need I say more? I will try to find links to that down in the description, but I do remember you linking me and me seeing previous to you linking me a clip of The View, I think it was, where they were talking about some woman cutting off the husband's penis and that being a joke. And you and I disagree, we've talked about this privately, but we disagree that it can be a joke. I think it can be a joke as long as the opposite is a joke. As long as we can later make fun of like some guy cutting off a woman's titty or some guy doing something brutal to a woman. I personally think both can be made funny, and I also personally think that if they're gonna laugh at that but they're not gonna laugh at the other, they're fucking piece of shit hypocrites, and they shouldn't be doing that on a platform that's meant to be like news or like a talk show. It's unprofessional, but as long as it's equal, it's fine, because I can find humor in anything. I think humor is a coping mechanism, and I think it makes perfect sense to make fun of something that's brutal and harsh and also kind of funny if you think about it in a morbid way. And I don't want to like reduce your opinion, but I understand that emotionally, if you have a penis and you also feel wronged by society as a man, you wouldn't be able to have the capacity to find the humor in that. And it makes sense. I empathize. I just don't agree. To explain what a men's rights activist is actually pretty simple. We're fed up. I personally am tired of turning on the TV or radio, and every time I hear a female voice, they are either crying about something as though it doesn't happen to men or laughing when it does happen to one of us. I'm fed up with the Canadian media talking about the Montreal massacre every December 6th while ignoring the courage of the 4 men who risked their lives to try and prevent it from happening. I'm tired of the lack of funding towards men's healthcare, the lack of concern for male suicide rates, men make up 80% worldwide, and the lack of facilities and programs to help male victims, which would be 43% of all victims of domestic violence. I've been in contact via social media with men who have endured every type of abuse that women have, and the fact that they are male is why it isn't taken seriously. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about my stance on male abuse. Let's talk about sexual abuse because that's a little bit easier to talk about. So while I do think if the man is calling himself a victim of a crime, then we should take that 100% seriously. I think that anytime a man is raped, sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, and he has a problem with it, he should have the legal resources, the support, the facilities, whatever, all of that women do. Maybe on a slightly shorter scale because men deal with things differently than women, so you're not gonna need as much emotional reassurance and it's not as prevalent, but it definitely happens and it definitely should be taken seriously. But you have to understand again why a lot of people kind of find it a joke when a guy's ass is grabbed or a young guy has sex with a teacher or something, depending on how young. I'm talking like 17 having sex with a teacher. It is a fact that more often than not, men will be like, fuck yeah, you know, female attention. And that's because men have a higher sex drive, and the sexual attention and affection of women is not only welcome, they're deprived of it. Now, does that take away from the person who was sexually assaulted and does feel wronged and did have a traumatic experience? Abso-fucking-lutely not. But at the same time, we can't be emotional about this, and I feel like your biggest problem here is that you're looking at everything through a glass of emotionality, through a glass of this is personally affecting me. And while it is personal for you, and I understand it's affecting you, you're going to be biased in what you see online, and I don't disagree that there's a lot of hate towards men these days, and that shit needs to fucking stop. But that's just from the female perspective and the female allies that are basically just trying to get laid or trying to navigate the mating world as betas. I don't know. You don't need to demonize one side in order to bring your side up, and I see that problem on your side as well as on the feminist side. The feminists are just more vocal and have more traction in the media, and that's why you're seeing it that way. I would challenge you to really try to look at things more objectively. For every time you see an injustice that helps your point, try to find one that helps the other side. Try to look at things from other people's perspectives, because then while you'll still be doing your activism because it still is a worthy cause, I don't think you will look at it so like, oh, woe is me, this is all one side and not the other. You won't be as biased and you won't be as emotional about it, and you can be more factual, and that'll help your cause a lot more, because one of the biggest problems with feminism and one of the biggest problems with them helping their cause is that they look like fucking clowns with how emotional they are. Don't stoop to that level. It's not going to help you or your cause. And don't fall into the trap of doing the exact same thing that the feminists do, which is if there are problems on women's side, that means there's no problem on men's side. If there are problems with men, that means there's no problem with women. It's hard for me to explain without, to some people at least, and I'm sure there will be 1 or 2 MRAs that come and watch my channel and don't know anything about me and don't know my stance and kind of think that I'm telling you that it's not a worthy cause or that you're wrong, and I'm not at all. Just from an outsider who doesn't have any of the female problems affecting them or the male problems but empathizes more with the male problems, I feel like you're not seeing everything clearly, and you come off more as complainy than as someone making a compelling argument that can get people on your side. side. My personal journey to become an MRA began when I was around 13 or 14 and saw Raquel Welch in a movie called Mira Breckenridge. In the movie, the character Mira, played by Welch, tracks Rusty the football player into a compromising position and proceeds to sodomize him with a strap on. I wasn't alone when I saw the movie, but I was the only one that didn't think it was funny. Even at that age, I knew that if things were the other way around, it wouldn't be seen as comical, and any attempt to do so would have, understandably, outraged the feminist community. I could probably write a book about the double standards men deal with, but instead I'll just recommend the documentary The Red Pill, which is a good documentary. I recommend it as well. It's very good. As well as its director Cassie J's YouTube channel. I'll link all of this down in the description. Anything I can find, any sources, I'll actually ask Albert before this video goes up. I'd also like to recommend Daisy Cousin and the Troop over at Honey Badger Radio. Maybe you could appear on the show for a chat with Bran Martinez. Is it Bran? Your handwriting's not bad, it's just like reading handwriting these days is weird. It's not typed text, you know? I know you get guys, and I know we have our problems. I think watching some of these YouTube channels will better help you see just how big the problem is. I personally am very aware of how big the problem is, and I think that everyone else should be educated on it as well as the arguments that the feminists make. And you should make your own decisions for whether or not you want to label yourself as one of these things and actually help the cause, or at least have some kind of objective measure, or at least more objective measure, of how frequently these things aren't gendered and happen to both sides. I think it's natural, honestly, for you to only look at things from your perspective, and it takes a lot of strength to overcome that bias in any kind of meaningful way to try to see the other side. And I think that's commendable, and I think everyone should do it. That's kind of why I wanted to make this video, because while I'm not an advocate of anything, because it's just not for me, I'm not gonna do any activist stuff, I do believe that it's important to have discussions about this and to have open and honest understandings of each other so that we don't just keep going through this like, you do this and that, oh my god, no, you do this and that, because that's how it feels, honestly. And it's hard not to get emotional about something that's affecting you directly, but I think a little bit of understanding for the other side and a little bit of empathy, as well as a lot more research that you try to take yourself out of, can help us all. So let's finish the letter. Finally, I want you to understand that this letter wasn't written out of anger, at least not directed at you, and it's not an attempt to recruit you into the MRA camp. I just wanted you and your many subscribers to better understand why this is so important to me and should be for everyone, whether you're a man or a woman with men in her life that she cares about. Love you lots, Albert. Thank you so much for writing this letter. My final thoughts, it's definitely a really big deal, but I feel like you're falling into a lot of the traps, like I mentioned, that the feminists fall into, except for you have a more rightful claim at this moment in society. I just hope that men's rights activism and the like doesn't devolve into what feminism has, and I hope that you can conduct yourself better, because while right now you might be more objectively the underdog, or you might feel wronged by media or society or how people in general see you, the fact that men are disposable, etc., there's still a lot of validity of the other side. Men and women have equal challenges, and giving each a voice is very important, but I think it should be a more objective, more well-calculated, and more facts-based voice than what we've seen all around thus far. I really do hope that people stop taking male sexual abuse and domestic abuse as something to be laughed at when it's serious. It does happen. It happens quite a lot. I'll link some statistics down in the description, and I hope that if you're a man and anything has ever happened to you, or you feel wronged or slighted, you speak up, just like I hope that women do when they are victims of something. I hope that you do your best to go through judicial measures, but with that being said, I still think that jokes are an acceptable coping mechanism. They're acceptable anytime, and telling people that they can't make certain jokes just because right now people are making those jokes too frequently or too frivolously isn't gonna help your cause. It isn't gonna make people rally to your side. It's gonna feel like you're trying to shut people up, or like you only care about one side of jokes. And I know that you personally, Albert, care about jokes about female assault and male assault, or female dismemberment and male dismemberment. You care about both, whereas I'm just proposing, let's not care about neither, let's care where it matters. But I also do still think that some of the public perception of men being stronger, men having these characteristics and women having different characteristics, and that playing a different role in how we view things as a society makes sense to an extent. I think the real deciding factor in whether you can laugh or whether you need to take legal action and take it very, very seriously is solely that someone was wronged and that person does feel wronged. Doesn't matter, man or woman, child or adult, and children don't really have a say much because, you know, they can't consent in our society until 18. But if the victim thinks that they were victimized and you can prove it, we should take it seriously. That does not mean that guilty until proven innocent just because someone thinks they're a victim. No. But it does mean that we shouldn't like laugh them out of existence and not even give them due process. Do not believe all women or all men, and don't only care about women or men. Hopefully I did these justice. I'm sorry if I came off as a little insensitive. I'm kind of like that. I'm not good it, like the platitudes and the sentiment aspect. I'm doing my best to try to explain my side without belittling your side, because I don't think your side should be belittled. I don't think your opinion should be belittled or silenced, and that's, you know, why I put it in a video. And thought that it would make a better cameo in something more serious than Friday Night Mail, where I'm just like trying on clothes, jiggling my titties, and answering silly questions about sex. Thank you so much for sending this to me, Albert. I hope I did it justice. I'm like cringing right now, just thinking about how you'll react to it, because I know we disagree on certain things. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video if you decided to watch it. I don't know what I'll title it yet. Maybe similarly to Jason's letter, the video I had to private because we talk about the N-word, where it's like Albert's letter, a chat about men's rights activism or something. I don't know. Links, sources, all that stuff, some reading material and watching material will be linked in the description. Albert's links, all that stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. And thanks again, Albert. Bye, guys.